Hi, friends. Welcome to episode number 19 of our procurement and sourcing series. We are trying to get into the deep visibility of procurement and sourcing capabilities in Microsoft Dynamics 365 Finance and Operation. In this video, we are going to discuss about the consignment inventory handling process, and it is going to be a detailed video. Make sure that you watch this video until then. With that note, let's quickly jump into today's topic. Lot to cover, and we will take this one by one. Okay. So first important point is, first of all, we need to understand about the consignment inventory, what the consignment inventory process is all about, why we need to follow the consignment inventory process. So first of all, this is basically an arrangement between the manufacturer and the retailer, or it can be between two manufacturers who wants to consume the inventory based on a specific demand from the customer or the end consumers. So I just created a small quick demo so that we first understand what this process is all about in the entire supply chain. Imagine you have a manufacturer who supplies material to the retailer, and then the retailer supplies the materials to the end consumers. This can be a retailer or a manufacturer who uses the raw materials from the manufacturer A and produces some other finished good, right? It can be any other manufacturer also. So in many cases, the manufacturer might not save or store the inventory in their premises. Instead, they will try to store this inventory in the retailer premises, by which the retailer will have quick access to the inventory, and the manufacturer can also service the customers on time, so that there is no unnecessary lead time delays or processing the purchase orders based on the demand. And there are many other benefits of using this consignment inventory process. So by fundamental, the definition of using consignment inventory is, the consignment inventory is the inventory that's owned by a vendor. The vendor can be a manufacturer or it can be any other third party. It is owned by a third party vendor. This inventory is actually owned by a third party vendor, but stored at your site, stored at the retailer or at the manufacturer B site, who is the customer for the vendor. When you are ready to consume, because at some point in time down the line in your supply chain, when there is a demand from the customers, then you use the inventory by changing the ownership. So because what exactly this means is, you need to change the ownership from the inventory owned by the manufacturer to the retailer in order to consume those inventory. So that's the whole idea of using consignment inventory in Microsoft Dynamics 365 Finance and Operation. This is a fantastic capability, I would say, because even though you have the inventory in your premise, it is under the ownership of the manufacturer, and only when you need those inventory to consume it for your production, or if you want to resell those inventory, only in those cases you change the inventory ownership from the manufacturer to the retailer, and then you can consume it, or sell it to the end customers. So this is the idea of having consignment inventory. But why do we need to do this process of consignment inventory in Microsoft Dynamics 365? This actually helps the manufacturers or the retailers to improve their serviceability, because you will be able to quickly service the customers. You are not in a position of stock out situations and unable to serve the customers on time. And then you have better visibility in the entire supply chain. Even though the stock is available at the retail premises, still you have the better control over the visibility of the inventory and cost reduction. Overall, if you see, when the order is received from the customer, you need to place the order to the manufacturer, and there are transportation charges, back and forth communications which has to happen. So all these cost reductions are there by following this process. And of course, like I said earlier, it also reduces the lead time, because once you get the order, after that you go back to the manufacturer, place the order, and then get the appropriate items from them. Overall, the customer waiting time gets increases because of this lead time. So if you follow the process of consignment inventory, you will be able to reduce the lead time, and you will be able to track the ownership, whether the inventory is available with the ownership of the retailer or with the manufacturer, the vendor who actually supplied the stock items. You'll be able to track the ownership. You will be automatically able to post the PO. We will quickly see this as part of this video, how the PO gets automatically posted once the moment we post the consignment inventory ownership change journal. So we will quickly see that also. And end of the day, among all these advantages, it improves the customer satisfaction, which is the most important aspect of why we need to follow the consignment inventory, right? So this is about what is consignment inventory, why we need to follow the consignment inventory process before getting into the system. So the next aspect is, first of all, we'll try to understand what are all the setups which are actually required in order to perform this entire process what we discussed right now. First, the most important setup is defining, configuring an item which is a consignment item in the system. Let me go get into the Dynamics 365 screen. So first, let me show you, because we actually didn't cover about product information management, where one of the most important part is whenever we release the products, the two important dimension groups are the storage dimension group and the tracking dimension groups. So we have not discussed about those storage and tracking dimension groups until throughout the 100 plus videos which we have published in our channel. But let me tell you, the tracking dimension group is where you will be able to configure the batch, serial, and inventory ownership dimensions. So tracking dimension group is the one where you need to configure this. These are the three tracking dimensions by default which is available in Dynamics 365. So the first most I, important idea over here is you need to make sure that the owner is active for those items which you want to configure the consignment inventory, and you have to use only those tracking dimension groups, right? So let me go back. In order to open the tracking dimension group, let me go to product information management, setup, and then under dimension and variant groups, you have the tracking dimension groups. So there can be multiple tracking dimension groups by default, which is available in the system. And by default, the dimension group owner is also available. So right now I'm picking the existing setup in the system, but make sure that if you're creating a new item, make sure that the tracking dimension group with the owner active is enabled. Only those items can be used in your consignment inventory handling process. So from here also I can check the already available related items. So let me go to that. So let me pick this particular item. So this item is a mini speaker. I can see the tracking dimension group is owner. And the next important setup here, which I mentioned in the presentation, is the item model group. The item model group can consist of the inventory model, which can be only moving average or standard cost. Even in this case, you can see the item model group, which is tagged as standard cost and not moving and not any other item model groups inventory policy. So if I go into in this item model group, you can see under the inventory model, we have multiple policies like FIFO, LIFO. We cannot will not be able to use those. Only it can be standard cost or moving average if you want the item to be configured as a consignment inventory. So let me go back. For example, if I show you here, if I create a new item, new 1 2 3, then let me select the item model group as FIFO. But if I select let me select any item group, that is fine. Storage dimension as site enviros, that is fine. But if we select the tracking dimension as owner, where the owner is enabled, where the owner is active, and if I select any other item model group apart from standard and moving average cost, system will not allow us to create the item, because the system clearly throws a validation that the tracking dimension group for this item has the owner dimension enabled. So if the owner dimension is enabled, only standard cost and the moving average cost models can be used. So this is another important aspect which you should be aware of. Let me close this. Then let me cancel this. So let me try to use the existing item in the system. So this is the item. Let me copy this. And the another setup which is important is the consignment owner. So like we discussed in our presentation, for first we need to define the item, then we need to define who are all the owners applicable for this particular inventory. So first we need to create a master for the owners which are applicable for this particular legal entity. So let me go back to the system. For we are in the legal entity USMF. So in order to create owners, all you have to do is, if you go to inventory management, and then under setup, dimensions, and inventory owners. So this is where you need to configure the inventory owners. This is the second setup which is actually required. So already we by default we have some owners configured in the system. I'll pick one particular owner and then we will configure it in the system. So by default you can also see the legal entity USMF is also created as a owner in the system, right? So next let's imagine that we get the orders from Fabricom Electronics as a consignment inventory, so which will not be available as a inventory in the a legal entity USM of. The ownership will primarily belong to Fabricom Electronics. Until unless we need, as and when we need those materials, we will change the ownership from Fabricom Electronics to Contoso Entertainment USA, USM of, and then only we will be able to consume those. So that's the whole idea of having this consumer inventory, right? So in order to have that, you need to create owners in the system. So here we already have few owners which are created. So I'll continue to use the same owners in the system. Then let me go back. So next important setup is the ownership change channel. So we created the item, consignment item, then we created the owners. So in the sense we already tried to use the existing owners in the system. So now we need to have the journal which helps us to change the ownership from Fabricom Electronics to Contoso Entertainment USA. So that is the third important setup. So in order to create a journal, what you have to do is if you go to setup under inventory management, there is a section called journal names, so inventory. So you have to make sure that you have a ownership change journal. I think by default the demo data will have a inventory ownership change journal, but make sure that if even if you are creating a new journal type, the journal then the journal type should be ownership change. Let me show you quickly. If you click on new, make sure that the journal type is ownership change. So that's a important setup which you have to do. This is the third most important setup, because using this journal inventory change journal only, you will be able to change the ownership from the vendor to your legal entity, whether it is USM of DMF or whether whatever may be the legal entity which you are operating. So that's the third setup. The fourth important point which I want to highlight over here is, let me move my video. The advanced warehouse processes cannot be used in case of this consignment handling process. One of the maybe not a disadvantage, but right now the advanced warehouse management processes cannot be used for these consignment handling processes. So make sure that you are not operating with the advanced warehouse and then trying to complete this entire consignment inventory handling processes. So these are all the setups which I just thought of mentioning. So, and talking about the how to handle these processes in the system. So that's what we are going to see right now. First, we will be creating the consignment replenishment order, because consignment replenishment order is different from the traditional purchase order, because you cannot handle these consignment inventory which the vendor sends you in advance by using the traditional purchase order. These inventory need to be accounted using the consignment replenishment orders, and by which whenever these orders are created, the inventory will be stored in your stock against the ownership of the consignment vendor and not the ownership of the buying legal entity. So that's the first step by which we need to create a consignment replenishment order. Imagine you are on 1st Jan and you receive some materials in advance from the vendor. First, you need to create a consignment replenishment order. How to create it? Let me go back to Dynamics 365 screen. Then, so here, let me go get into procurement and sourcing module. And then under consignment section, you have an option called consignment replenishment orders. Click on consignment replenishment orders and then click on new. So this is something similar to the screen what we have in purchase orders. So you can also check out the video where I explained in detail about the purchase orders. And here first we will be creating a purchase consignment replenishment order for Fabricom Electronics. And the site and warehouse can be anything, but the thing is you can have a clear bifurcation between the site and warehouse which you want to use at the warehouse level also. So physically you know which are all the inventories belong to consignment vendor, or which are all the inventories which you want to have which belongs to the buying legal entity. So you can create a separate warehouse under the respective site and this thing. So for this video I've just selected a specific site and warehouse. You can have any site and warehouse as per your convenience. Let me click on OK. And then you need to add the replenishment order lines over here by clicking on add line. So let me copy the paste the number. So this is the item which we have copied in the um, item master list, where for which the tracking dimension owner is active. So this was that particular item. And let me give a quantity as 1000. Let's say vendor is giving 1000 quantity of this mini speaker on the January 1st to me as a consignment inventory, right? And You can also check out if there are any dimensions which you need to capture. Okay, let me select a dimension over here, location also. I think inventory and license plate does not make a big difference over here because we are not using the advanced warehouse processes over here. So I'm just capturing the location alone, and then you can generate a product receipt. And warehouse 51 on consumer replacement because they are okay. So that's great. So this is the whole idea which I actually want to show you, because warehouse 51 has been enabled with advanced warehousing processes, so we cannot use this. So let me change this to 221. Then what is the location which is available? That's great. So that's what one of the important point which I highlighted in the setup. You cannot use the consumer replenishment order because they are enabled with advanced warehouse management processes. So it's good that we got this validation. Let me save this again. Then let me create a product receipt. So now I think 21 is not advanced warehouse management process control warehouse. So that's the reason it allows us. The product receipt is a reference. So this, if you want, you can provide it, and if not, you don't need to provide this consignment inventory 1 2 3. I'm just giving a random reference. And even if you want to provide any vendor batch date, just for the tracking purpose, you can do this. You can also follow the process of registration, which we already discussed about this in our purchase order episode. Please do check out the same. Let me click on OK. So this will actually post the consignment replenishment order into the system. So now let me duplicate this tab. So because this right now this particular transaction is posted as a consignment replenishment order into the system, by which means we got this stock into the system, but it is right now available under the ownership of Fabricom. How we can say this? Let me collapse all. Let me go to inquiries and reports, and if I click on and list, and then okay, this is the item, then let me click on apply. Yeah, 221. So this is the owner, US101. Let me filter with this owner. Yeah, so this is Fabricom Electronics vendor ID. Against this vendor, you can see 1000 is the quantity which is physically which we have received. But this is right now available under the ownership of Fabricom and not under the ownership of the buying legal entity USMF. So you can see the buying legal entity already we have a ownership under the USMF. We have a stock of 100 quantity, and we have a stock from Acme Office Supplies for 1100. So by using the column ownership, you will be able to know which particular inventory is available under the ownership of the buying legal entity USMF. We are in USMF, and you can see this. Now let's go back to the slide. So imagine that you created the consignment replenishment order right now, and then you completed the inward process, and right now the inventory, the consignment inventory is with the ownership of the vendor. Next, or you imagine you are in 20th Jan, you got some orders from the customers, which actually requires usage of the order which you have received, the mini speakers which you have received. Either you can use it for your production or you can directly use it for reselling it, right? So first important point which you have to do is you need to change the ownership from the vendor to the buying legal entity USMF. So how to do that? So let me go back to the Dynamics 365 screen. So now we are going to change ownership of this inventory from US1001 to USMF. So in order to do that, if you go to procurement and sourcing module, then under inventory ownership change, just click on new. So here, that's where I told you you need to assign the inventory ownership change journal. So make sure that you have that setup in place. So I'm selecting the existing change journal which is already available in the system. Then let me click on OK. Now here I need to add the line and then enter the item number for which this is not the item number, and let me, I think I need to copy that. Yeah, I know this is the item number. So you need to make sure that you copy the item number and paste the relevant consignment inventory item number, and then system will prompt you to change from which side to. So here if I go back to the screen, so here I can see it's from site 2 or 21 and location 21. So let me change site to warehouse is also 21. So you can see that we are not allowed to change the two site, and two owner by default it can be USMF only. So if I try to change the ownership from USMF to any other vendor from the system, let me save this. You can see you can only change inventory ownership from an owner who is not the current legal entity. So which means you can create a owner who is a vendor, another legal entity, and you can change it, but it cannot be the current legal entity, USMF. So you can change from any other owner to USMF, but not from USMF to another legal entity or owner. So which is not possible. So now let's change it to Fabricom Electronics, because I need to change it from Fabricom Electronics to USMF, and I want to do a quantity of 1, 2, 3, let's say. Um, and then in the inventory dimension, I need to make sure that I capture the location also, because here this location is also active for this item, so that that's the reason I need to capture the location. Otherwise, if the location is not active storage dimension, then the capturing the location does not make sense. So let me close this, and then right now we are moving this inventory from owner US 1001 to USMF. Let me click on post. So this will post the inventory ownership change channel. So once this journal is posted, then the ownership of the inventory will be changed from Fabricom Electronics to USMF. And most important point is the journal is posted. You can see the posting has completed. Most important point here is you can see the purchase order is automatically created. So let me go back to the slide. So you can see here, once the post ownership inventory ownership change journal happens, and on the same day, same time, a automatic posting of the PO and the product receipt for the quantity for which the ownership has been changed will also happen, so that the inventory and the cost accounting will happen to your particular ledgers where you actually have the legal entity. So let me go back to the screen. So inventory, so you can see the inventory ownership change journal is posted. So now let me go to the purchase orders. Yeah, we are in procurement and sourcing, all purchase orders. So you can then get a invoice copy from the vendor over email, and then you can process for process further for invoice posting and other ledger transactions. So you can see the vendor, the PO is automatically confirmed against the vendor Fabricom Electronics, and then it got created, and then it also automatically received against the quantity 1, 2, 3. So this is the whole idea of using consignment inventory process. So now this material is available for you to consume in your production, or you can resell it to the end consumer based on your business specific requirements. So let me go back to the screen. So I will also make sure that I share all the related MS Docs links in this video's description. Please do check out the same. And this is the whole idea of using consignment inventory process. And I'm sure that because this is something which is used widely across many manufacturing organizations, retail organizations, where you have minimum handling charges and lead time and better customer satisfaction by following the consignment inventory process in Dynamics 365. So that brings us end of this video. In the next episode, we will be discussing about another important capability within Dynamics 365, which is direct delivery process. Make sure that you subscribe to the channel or follow my profile in LinkedIn. Thank you.